Hi, this is James Cook of the University of Maine at Augusta. This video is about income inequality, measuring it in the United States, and measuring it within the United States locally. Now, income inequality is most typically measured as layers of stratification, at least, through income quintiles. To review, if you haven't studied income quintiles before, what they essentially involve is taking a set of people, each of whom has a reported income, putting them in order from lowest income to highest income, and then dividing that set of people into fifths. So into equal numbers of people, 5 of them. 5 sets of equal numbers of people. But you have to imagine that they're along this line from lowest income to highest income. So the lowest fifth, the lowest 20% of that set of people is going to be the lowest quintile. Then the second lowest quintile will be the next 20% in the line. The middle quintile will be the next 20% of people, the next fifth in the line. The next fifth after that is the penultimate quintile. If you're counting from the bottom, it would be called the fourth quintile. And then there's the top quintile, the top 20%. There's always 20% of whatever set of people you're measuring in a quintile. That's what a quintile is. But because it's ordered from lowest to highest, you can look at the differences between, say, the lowest quintile and the top quintile, the middle quintile and the top quintile, the fourth quintile and the lowest quintile. Because unless there is perfect equality and everybody has exactly the same income, the top quintile must have the highest, the lowest quintile must have the lowest, but the amount of difference between them, the lowest and the highest, is indicative of how much income inequality there is. So that was a really quick introduction, but we can get very specific very quickly thanks to data transparency in the age of the internet. By going to Data.Census.Gov. And at Data.Census.Gov, when we type it in, we'll be taken to this webpage, which invites us to explore census data. Now, the United States Bureau of the Census is most famous for doing a study every 10 years, in which it tries to count everybody in the nation. But what is just as important is that every year it's responsible for carrying out and then reporting to us the American Community Survey, in which many, many, many thousands of people, but not the whole population, is sampled, and in town after town after town after town after town, all across the country, characteristics of people are collected. So the American Community Survey collects loads of information about people every year. And one of the things that it collects is information about income. And one of the things that the Census Bureau does then is it lines them up, both across the whole country and then from state to state, and then in subdivisions of states like counties and like towns, it lines people up from the lowest income to the highest income, and it divides them up into quintiles. In order to find that data, we have here a search box. And what do you type in? You just type in the keyword for what you're looking at. Now, you could try income, but you'll notice that when I always hit search, it has some suggestions, but you'll notice there's a lot of data about income, right? Loads and loads and loads of data about income. So I'm going to suggest that you don't try searching by income. Instead, think about the most exclusive word in looking for quintiles, which is quintile itself. So when you search for quintile, under tables, you'll be given just 3 options. And today we're going to talk about 2 of them. The first is shares of aggregate household income by quintile. And that's our third option. And then the second one we'll look at today is the mean or average household income within quintiles. So let's take a look there. When you click through, unless you've done a search before and the computer is remembering some specific geographies you're interested in, you will be shown detail for the entire United States. Now that's useful and that's interesting because it gives you a basis for comparison. So for instance here, I'm going to make this a little bit larger for you to see, just because that never hurts. Okay, but here we can see that the lowest quintile gets 3.15% of all the income. The second quintile gets 8.48% of all the income. These are percentages. How do we know that? Well, we can check that. And the highest quintile gets, the highest 20% get 51.56% of all the income. We can figure that out by selecting these cells, copying them, and then pasting them into a handy-dandy spreadsheet program. Like Microsoft Excel, you could also do it in Google Sheets or another program. Now, I've just inserted a row above that because I want to indicate that this is for the USA in 2019. Okay, how do I know it's from 2019? Because if I look up here in the header, I see that it's under product got listed 2019 ACS, American Community Survey, 1-year estimates. Now, when I click this little green arrow to the right, I should be able to see that there are a number of different years I can go to, all the way back to 2010. And you'll notice that there are 1-year and 5-year estimates. Why would you have 5-year estimates? What they do is they would lump in the last 5 years. Okay, so 2019, 2018, 2017, 16, and 15, right? And that would be the 2019 5-year estimates. That would be needed when you want to look at a geographically small place for which in any 1 year they only sample a certain number of people. Right? Because for each of these estimates, there's a margin of error, right? And one of the nice things about the census is that they're very careful and they don't want to present to the world information about income inequality in, say, a small town when they only have in 1 year a few people that they've talked to, and therefore would have a huge margin of error and not that much confidence that what they've described is all that different. So what they offer us, really nice, is the ability to take a look at 5-year estimates. Okay, so the disadvantage of that is that you aren't getting the up-to-date, latest year available information about trends in income inequality. So if you are most interested in trends in income inequality within the United States, by all means, look at those 1-year estimates, either at the national level or at the state level for most states that are pretty populous. But if you're wanting to look at a locality, by all means, go look at that 5-year estimate. Now, the 5-year estimate for the American Community Survey here is not going to be that different if we notice here these estimates, and we can check that. Right. The digits are slightly different because there has been some change over time, but it's essentially the same ordering and essentially the same magnitudes. Oh, by the way, some of you may be noticing this top 5%, okay? That is taking, what is 5% out of 20%? It's a quarter, the top quarter of the top 20%, okay? And you can think of a world in which everybody had the same income. In such an ideal world, and I mean ideal in terms of ideal types, not necessarily morally ideal. You would have, for every percent of the US population would have 1% of income. The top 5% would have 5% of income. The top 20%, the highest quintile, would have 20% of income, and so would every other quintile. And you can look at the deviation from what that would be if we had absolutely equal distribution of income, and notice that, okay, well, here you have more than 4 times as much as you would expect from chance alone if everybody had the same income, rather. Because if it was evenly distributed, then you would have the top 5% getting essentially 5% of the income. Instead, they have over 23%, which is 4 times as much. The highest quintile, which is the top 20% of people, if this was a thoroughly equal world, that top 20% would have 20% of the income. Instead, they have 51.61% over the last 5 years. In the United States, it's telling that us up at the top of the table, and that's a little bit more than 2 times as much. So what that top 5% pullout is telling you is that income inequality, it becomes especially disproportionate in the top of that highest quintile. Okay, but let's take that 5-year estimate here for the United States, because we'd like to compare it to 5-year estimates for other localities in the United States. So I'll take here and paste that in. And I will call that, I'll still call it USA 2019, but I'll give it a whole table name of 5-year estimates. By the way, why don't we have 2020 data yet? It's because as of the recording of this video, 2020 just finished very recently, and so that data has not been thoroughly collected yet, or compiled yet. It takes a while to compile that data, make sure it's of good quality, check any errors, go back and if there's missing data, figure out how to handle that. So I'm going to make this a little bit larger for you so you can see these numbers a little better. Now, I live in the state of Maine, working in the University of Maine at Augusta. So why don't I take a look at what's going on in the state of Maine? It's not that hard here with the American Community Survey data. And the way to do that on the Data.Census.Gov website is to go to Customize Table. And there are lots of ways to customize tables, okay, which is lovely. One of the things you can do, by the way, you can download to Excel. You could put this on a map, all kinds of neat things like that. You play with that another time, but I'm really interested in this tab over toward the left called Geos, because that's short for geography. So I'm going to click Geos, and it's going to show me all kinds of different geographies I could look at, largely from the highest level geography, the whole nation, down to the smallest level geography. And for different kinds of variables, that is, different kinds of measures that they have in the American Community Survey, you can get down to different levels of locality. It's not all the same for every measure of locality, because they're so fastidious about what they do when they have small numbers of people. So, but if we wanted to look at a state, for instance, the state of Maine, I'd just click state in geography. And now I could compare all states by clicking all states, and it would give me a really long table to look through. But right now, I'm just going to scroll down to the state of Maine, and I'm going to select that. Now, you'll notice here down at the bottom, it now says selected geographies. It's going to remember that. So if you then decide to look at something else, you should use this button over on the right called Clear Geographies first, right? And that will make sure that you have a nice, clean measurement each time. So again, I'm going to go to Geographies. I'm here in 2019 American Community 5-year estimates, detailed tables. And I'm going to find Maine again, and I'm going to click that. And now that it's selected, I can hit close on the right. And when I close that, now you'll notice up here, the label no longer says United States. It says Maine, because this is talking about Maine. And even though this is the wonderful thing about quintile measurements, even though there are different numbers of people in Maine compared to the whole United States, you can still take all the people in Maine and line them up in your mind from lowest income to highest income, and then divide by all the number of people in Maine divided by 5. So to put them in 5 equal sets of people, and then figure out how much of all the income is there. You can then take that information, although here, I suppose we already have labels, so I'll only get these ones here for the estimate. Notice the margin of error is still quite low. And I'm going to paste them in right here. What could be handier? And then, of course, before I forget, I'm going to give my row a title, Maine 2019, okay? And there we go. Now, when we sum these rows up using the equals sum and then the names of the cells, in this case, it's column B, row 2, 2, and then use the little colon to indicate a range, to B6. It highlights it so we know that we got the right range. Hit return, it sums to 100%. That's how we know that this is a percentage. That, and also looking at them. Occasionally, you get something like 100.01% because these are rounded numbers, right? And every once in a while, because of rounding error, you get 0.01 at the end, but it's essentially fine for you to make large-scale comparisons here. One of the things we'll notice is that Maine, compared to the United States, has slightly greater income equality. How do we know that? Because the highest quintile in Maine has just, and this is still just, it's still a good 2.5 times as many, but it's 48.66% of all the income in Maine goes to the top 20%, whereas for the highest quintile in the United States, it's above 51, headed toward 52%. That is a difference, and it does trickle down to the lowest quintile. The lowest quintile still is underrepresented, right? We'd expect, according to equal distribution, then it would have 20%, but because it's unequal distribution, it's 3.6%, but that's a bigger share than 3.13%. And you see for all the 4 lower quintiles, there's a slightly higher number for Maine than for the United States. Okay, so now we know a social fact. Okay, but let's then take a look at some level of information that's below that. So let's go back to our table and let's hit Geo again. And it's reminding me up here. Now, it doesn't just say Geo, it says 1 Geo. It's reminding me, oh yeah, you're looking at Maine. I'm going to want to clear the geographies there, just to make sure that each time I start afresh. And then I'm going to head to Geos, and I'm going to want to look for some level of geography that is below the state level. Okay, so I could select county, and we know there are 16 counties within the state of Maine. Props to you if you can pronounce them all correctly. I'm not sure I can. And then we would find the state of Maine, and then it's going to give us another selection. Okay, and here they are. And I could take a look at a particular county, right? It's really intuitive. And then once I'm ready to go, I could hit close, and it's going to tell me what the level of income inequality is for a county. Kennebec County 2019, but I know that these are 5-year estimates, so it's going back 5 years, and I could paste them right in. So, interestingly, as you tend to go from larger areas to smaller areas here, you've got less income inequality, summing up to 100 again, so we know these are percentages. So, what if I want to go down below the level of a county? This is where it's really important to get your 5-year estimates. So notice if I go up here to the 2019 and I just stick to 1-year estimates, it'll give me the 1-year estimate for Kennebec County, Maine, because Kennebec County, Maine, like most counties in the United States, have a good number of people. Although you'll notice the margin of errors start to creep up here. They're still really good compared to the size of the estimates, but they're somewhat lower, or higher rather, the margin of errors than what you get when you aggregate 5 years of observations together. Okay, so that's one reason, but I'll show you another reason. And that is if we want to look below the level of a county to towns. Now, I could clear all these geographies. Yes, I want to clear those selections. And what if I want to clear those geographies? Yes. And I'm still in Kennebec County, Maine. So what do I do here? If I want to really get out, okay, sometimes unfortunately, it's going to stick around with Kennebec here. So I'm going to go right back to the beginning. I just hit search over on the left, and I'm going to hit quintile again. And when I get that, I see shares of aggregate household income by quintile, which is what I've been looking at. We're back at the United States. Okay, it's handy. And we're up here at 2019 American Community Survey 1-year estimates. And if I want to look at geographies, and if I want to look at not counties, but I could scroll down, tracts, no, zip codes, no, elementary school districts, no, I want to look for a particular place, like a town. Why not use place? Okay, so I could look within Maine, and look at all the choices I have for all the places in Maine that are big enough to make an estimate for 1 year. It's one place, Portland's biggest city, which most states wouldn't even call a city. They'd call it a nice-sized town, Portland, Maine. That's the only one you've got if you're working with 1-year estimates, and that's because if we take a look at the results for Portland, okay, for the city of Portland here, you've got pretty big margins of error. What happens if you select up to American Community Survey 5-year estimates? You've got lower margins of error, number one, and then here's the real kick, okay? Yes, let's clear the selections, and now let's try to get some information at the, what do we call it? Place level, and Maine is selected. Oh, look at all these places in Maine, A's and B's, C's, D's, E's, F's, G's, right? Wonderful. H's, do we have H's? Yes, we have no I's, which is interesting because there are places that begin with I in the city of Maine. Do we have, among the H's, do we have all the H's that could possibly be there? No, but we have a lot of them. For instance, there's a town called Hope, Maine, and it's not in there. It's a relatively smaller one. Up in the A's next to, Hope, there's Appleton, and Appleton's not there. It's a relatively small place. But it's more places. And I want to give you a little bit of a hint. It's not entirely obvious, but let's clear geographies again. And let's go look into our Geos with the American Community 5-year estimates table. And for the state of Maine, we're going to want to look, we're not use place, which makes sense. All of those are places. But there is this option, see all the different options here? Wow, it's amazing. What we're going to want to look at is county subdivision, okay? And then we're going to look within the state of Maine. And now let's just click all county subdivisions within Maine. Okay. And then we'll see a lot of them in just a moment. Let's close this and see what we've got. Oh, okay, great. Now they're organized by county, but let's go over and check Knox County, which is where Appleton, I believe, and Hope are. If Appleton's not in Knox County, it's on the border of Knox and Lincoln. So let's go take a look. They're organized here by county, and we're going to go looking for, there's Kennebec. We're going to go looking for Knox County. Oh, there's Knox County. Now, it is got some empty places for the smallest of places, and I'm talking about Matinicus here, a little tiny island, great island, but very small in terms of population, off the coast of Maine. But it's got the data for Hope there. It's got data for Friendship, another place that's pretty darn small. It's got Camden, which is a little bigger. But now it's got Appleton. There we go. Appleton, it's got estimates, Camden, Cushing, Friendship, and Hope. Isle of Hope, sorry, you're out of luck. That population is too small in order to be able to keep those margins of error small. Now, we could say, let's look within Kennebec County, because we were looking at Kennebec County over there. So let's drift over a little bit to the left. I'm going to show you a little bit of an easier approach, which is if you're wanting to look within a particular county in Maine, try going and just selecting that one county and then clicking all county subdivisions within that one county of Maine. Okay, so we could go with Augusta, Belgrade, which is to the north of Augusta, Great Town, Benton. Belgrade's got a lot of Great Lakes. China, Chelsea, Clinton, Farmingdale, Fayette, Gardner. Oh, Hallowell. So let's look at Hallowell. Okay, so there's Hallowell there. It's got some, funky cafes and things like that. And we could say within Kennebec County, Maine, we'll look at Hallowell. And then we could paste that in. And Hallowell, Maine. Okay, Hallowell 2019. That's good enough. Nice theater in Hallowell. And again, that sums up to 100%. Great, so we know we're working with percentages here. And here, the income inequality, interestingly enough, for Hallowell, it does not continue the trend of increasing income equality. Nope, Hallowell has got more income inequality than either Kennebec County or Maine or the United States overall, at least at the lowest level, because for the lowest quintile, Hallowell is where the lowest quintile has the least. Now, for the highest quintile, it's kind of comparable to the United States as a whole, right? More income inequality than the entire state of Maine or Kennebec County. So that's interesting. And so, you can make these comparisons right here. Very cool, very interesting. You could play with that. You could compare places where you've lived to places that you've moved to or places that you're thinking of moving to. Do you want a place that has a lot of income inequality or very little income inequality? Okay, so this is 5-year estimates, and let's clarify what that is. Quintile shares. Okay, and then I'm going to take that out. But we could look also at the question of within each of these places, how much money each quintile typically makes. Because one of the things that's true is that you can have a lot of income equality, but it could be for two reasons. Either everyone's really rich or everyone's really, really poor. And those two distinctions make a lot of difference in the nature of the life that the people in that place live. So what we're going to be looking for next is a 5-year estimate of the mean income in a quintile. That is, on average, how much income did folks in those quintiles, in those places make? And let's use those same headers to describe those same places. Now I'm going to Alt-Tab, switch my window back to Data.Census.Gov and my results here, and I'm going to just go to Geos. Okay, I'm going to clear all my geographies so it doesn't try to remember things for me, and I'm going to head in the upper left here all the way back to search. Data.Census.Gov is the home page, and I'm going to type in quintile again. Now there are 3 measurements you can be offered here with the American Community Survey data here, and one is the upper limits, like the top of the quintile, how much do they earn? But for today, we'll be interested in the average. So average equals mean. So we're going to look at the mean household income of quintiles, and it's going to give us the United States again. So let's copy that, and there's a big amount of income inequality here, right? So the highest quintile earns on average in the United States in 2019 with the 1-year survey data. I don't want to copy that yet at all. $238,035 on average within the quintile. Because we're going to be going down to the town level, let's look at 5-year estimates to pool those 5 years together to be able to look at smaller places. Okay, and so the numbers are slightly different, but the overall trend is the same. Those in the highest 20% of income are earning $228,670 on average. In the lowest quintile, $13,870. And what about those top 5%? Boy, they're earning a lot more even than the top 20%. On average, the top 5% in the country over the last 5 years, 2019, 18, 17, 16, and 15, earned $413,654. That is, as I used to say when I was a child, a lot of gumballs that you could buy. And that's what money does. It gets us things that we deem important to us. So these are dollar values. So I'm going to actually select them, and I'm going to put the little dollar sign next to them to help me remember what these units are. And then I'm going to say, let's compare these quintiles to what's going on in the state of Maine. So how do I do that? I'm going to go to Geos. Now, I'm always going to make sure that my 2019 5-year estimates is selected up here because we want to compare in the same time period, at least for today. But we could look at the state, and we could look at the state of Maine. Okay, and then we could close. And making sure up here that we're talking about the state of Maine, 2019 ACS 5-year estimates, we have a result that is somewhat different. Now, for the lowest quintile, it's essentially the same. But the difference in Maine that we can see is that for the highest quintile, they're not earning quite as much as the highest quintile earns in the United States. So that's why Maine has more income equality. It's not because the relatively income poor are better off, but because the heights of income are not doing as well as the rest of the country in that same quintile. We could see that directly right here. Right? And it looks like here in the 3rd quintile and above is really where that difference takes off. There's a little bit of a difference for the 1st and 2nd quintile, but not much. But for the 3rd quintile, the 4th quintile, the 5th quintile, there's much more difference. In fact, I could temporarily say, insert a column and say diff for difference, right? And I could take B10, or if I want to say how is Maine different than the United States, I could say take cell C10, the Maine cell, and subtract excuse me, I want to get the right cell, B10. And right, Maine is earning $168 less in that lowest quintile. The parentheses mean less. Apparently, I have to make this a little wider so we can see it. Okay, each quintile is earning less in Maine than the quintile in the United States, but the difference here in the lowest quintile is small. The differences get bigger as you get higher up along the income scale, which is why there is here more income equality in Maine than in the United States. Pretty cool, huh? To be able to say things like that accurately on the basis of just 5 pieces of data for each place. But let's continue. Now let's look at Kennebec County, Maine. That's cool. Okay, so now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to clear my geos, my geographies. Yes, I want to. And then I am going to select a new geographic category, which is county. Now I'm going to look for not all counties in Maine, for goodness sake, although I could, I could scroll through and find Knox County, but I just want that Knox County right now. Oh, Kennebec County, excuse me. What am I saying? Always check your work. And in Kennebec County, Maine, these are our estimates for the quintiles, the average income. Okay, so now notice that for the quintiles in Kennebec County, the lowest quintile, second quintile, third quintile, fourth quintile, and fifth quintile in Kennebec County, Maine, each of them is earning less than in Maine overall. And in Maine, each of those quintiles is earning less than in the United States. So Kennebec County is experiencing both less income inequality, but also less income for each of those quintiles. Let's turn these into dollar signs too, so that we remember what we're talking about. Although if I wanted to be a stickler, I'd recognize that these dollar amounts are not in pennies, so I could head up under number, and I could use this little blue arrow to take away the pennies, because we're really talking about whole dollar amounts. They round to the nearest dollar when they're doing their averages. For the final comparison here, let's take a look at Hallowell. Okay, and I'm gonna go up to my geos. I'm gonna clear them. And, sometimes it works if you don't clear them. I always like to, just to be sure. I'm gonna select those geos again, and I'm gonna skip place, which sounds good, but I have learned county subdivision works better for Maine. Now, in different places, right, there may be different names for what these things are. Some places have villages as well as towns or official hamlets, and it can be complicated, but this is how it works within the state of Maine. And I'm going to look at Hallowell. Here we are, Hallowell City, Kennebec County, Maine. Sounds good? Let's close this and see what we've got. Interesting. Interesting indeed. Okay. So, for Hallowell 2019, let's put that in dollar signs and take that down to the nearest dollar. We've got something a little complicated going on here. For the lowest quintile, let's calculate the difference again, okay? And so E10 minus D10. Okay, so Hallowell, the lowest 20% of people in Hallowell earn quite a bit less, especially when you notice the units are small, right? When you are talking about only earning a few $1,000s a year, wow. The poorest people in Hallowell really are not earning very much money at all, less than $10,000, okay? And $3,500 less than in Kennebec County overall. But when I look at those differences, there's basically no difference for the second quintile. For the third quintile, here's something different. Now, compared to Kennebec County, because this is E12 minus D12, the people in Hallowell, the middle quintile, the middle 20% of people are actually earning more than the middle percent of Kennebec County. And then if I take E13, gives me those nice shadings so I can check my work, minus D13, I'll notice that, wow, okay, now the difference is getting bigger. In Hallowell, the penultimate, the next to highest quintile is earning $5,700 more. And once you get up to equals, because always put an equals in front of your formulas, cell E14 minus D14, $28,000 difference between Hallowell and Kennebec County, Maine. Hallowell, the top quintile, is even higher than the top quintile for Maine. Okay, but let's keep that wow, Hallowell is rich kind of narrative in order, because actually when we compare that to the USA overall, every one of these quintiles for Hallowell is lower than for the United States overall. But even though that's the case, right, the really low income for the poorest of the people in Hallowell is so much lower than any of these other geographies that it kicks up this income inequality for the low quintiles, the lowest one particularly that we saw here. So now we can say really subtle things about Hallowell, that it has, compared to Maine and compared to Kennebec County, it has richer rich people, but it also has poorer poor people. So the next time you hear someone say, oh, Hallowell, fancy schmancy, you should follow up by saying, what Hallowell are you talking about? The last thing I want to point out is forest for the trees, what we're looking at here. When you are looking at both of these kinds of information, right? This is absolute income here, right, in dollar terms. This is relative income compared to your neighbors. Okay, that's important to note. And the second thing to notice is that there are relations here. It's a macro level set of relations, where macro means we're not studying units of people, but we're studying units of people aggregated into clumps called quintiles, right? Really large scale, especially when you think of the United States, which has well over 300 million people. Dividing them into fifths has huge numbers of people in each of those fifths. For Hallowell, not so much. It's a much smaller place, and he'll be talking about maybe hundreds to thousands in a town in Maine. But these are relationships between sets of people in a place, between quintiles in a place. And that makes it a social structure, because a social structure is a set of relations between social objects, right? That's what a social structure is. This is therefore a kind of social structure. It's one that's comparable across different kinds of geographies in different places. If you converted to dollars from another currency, you could compare a town in Maine, like Hallowell, to a town in Holland, or to a town in Zambia, or to a town in China. And yes, information is available about income inequality in different countries. Kind of cool. It's a particular kind of social structure called stratification, which is relations in layers. There are layers here. These are strata. Strata are what we call the layers. Social strata, where we think about the highest, the lowest. What is it ordered in terms of? It's ordered in terms of income. And income inequality is what's measured here. You can find this for your town if you live in the United States, unless you're in a really, really, really small town, in which case you can still look it up for your county, or in some states, your parish. And I encourage you to do so. You can find not only this kind of information for 2019, but you can go back to 5-year data from 2010 using this public information, and you can see how things have changed over time. That is something that is not done in most towns in the United States. Most people don't have that level of awareness about what's going on in their town. You can get that higher level glimpse of what's going on in your town and get an image that you can't get in your social circles. Why can't you get that image accurately? By just talking to the people you know and saying, hey, how's your income doing? 2 reasons. Number 1, people are not going to report it to you, most likely, and if they do, they might not be accurate, or they might be vague about it, because there's a social norm against sharing income information in public conversation. Maybe if they're your best friend, they might tell you, but you're not going to be able to get that information from huge numbers of people on an individual basis. And the second thing that's going on in society that we know of from social network analysis is homophily, that the people you probably know in your town are going to be disproportionately likely to have an income similar to yours. So if you are a poor person living in Hallowell and you ask 5 of your friends, hey, how much income did you earn last year? If they tell you at all, let's say they pull out our IRS tax return and share that information with you, right? Even if they do, it's not going to be representative of the town that you live in, because you will tend to know other poor people. If you're a high-income person, most of the people that you're going to know, they're going to disproportionately tend toward that higher income scale. You may have one poor friend, but most of your friends will end up, because of this pattern called homophily, similarity in social ties, most of the people that you will know will have an income like yours. So as an individual person, you can't get this information on the ground. You have to get up higher to be able to look at the whole town. Thanks to the U.S. Census Bureau and the American Community Survey, and thanks to the people in, yes, the United States government, who are applied sociologists who are sharing this information with you, you have the power to get that image of your town. Imagine what would happen if you looked at the income levels in your town, in your county, and then looked at all the other towns in your county. You could make a map that shows where the income inequality is greatest and where the income is greatest. Are they the same? Are they different? These are great questions to ask about the place that you live, the social environment that you are in, even when there are some people with conditions that you can't see in your town socially, or that you don't run into, because we are a stratified society and we do segregate by income, whether we mean to or not. I encourage you to take a look. I guess this is a good place to stop, but as you can see, there are a lot of questions you can answer with this very simple tool and this very simple set of measurements.